Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra special episode. Once again, we're talking about Arcane Season 2, Episode 3. I'm your host, Ryan, here with Hetch. You're the host.
We'll get there. All right.
We'll get there.
But yeah, no, like we are wrapping up Act 1 of Arcane today. Like it is the Episode 3, and of course, you know, the makers of Arcane, Riot Games, agrees with us fully where his story is best told in 3 parts.
You took the words out of my mouth, you bastard.
It's my show now.
That's how we know they're listening. Yet another piece on the corkboard, right? Housekeeping up top. You can listen to us everywhere. Visit us at podcastcore.com for all of our info. Email us at podcastcore@gmail.com. Follow us on all the platforms because that helps us with discoverability. We appreciate it, but leave a like and comment wherever you listen the most. Word of mouth has gotten us this far. So tell a friend to learn why building a pipeline through an impoverished neighborhood is inhumane by listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast.
And, you know, that is easily the most American way to start this episode. Because we never in our country's history have had issues with pipelines.
We don't sugarcoat it here, folks. Part 1 of a 3-part story. Let's get into it. So we start this one off by finally seeing the secret information that Kate got access to. Remember when her mother passed away, gave her a key, unlocked a special computer. And what she's looking at are blueprints and information about the ventilation system across Piltover and Zaun, and that it has been manipulated to keep the Grey trapped in Zaun. And then we get this music montage that begins as the task force begins to, ravage the streets, imploring state violence, as they do on random citizens as they're searching for Jinx. They have like most wanted signs, stuff like that around. And they find out that Jinx has been devising a plan involving rerouting the vents.
And one of the things that is interesting about this is that the Kiramon family and how much power they've had with the ventilation system, because you have to have some kind of power there to have the blueprints for all of it.
Yeah.
But Caitlin actually hears her mother's voice and it's like, the people of Zaun deserve to breathe. And so we then get a shot of the blueprints as far as like how Caitlin's mom rerouted the vents to get the Grey away from Zaun. So it's like actually just going out away from all civilization instead of directly into Zaun. But it's still staying trapped down there. And Caitlin's like, this will save a lot of money on tear gas. Because that's what's happening in this montage. Is she's using the Grey as tear gas on.
Yeah, she's in cop mode. It's great with Caitlin because she's in that area. They talk about, what a few bad apples ruin the bunch, right? And, you always talk about the concept of, is there such thing as a good cop? And Caitlin's really in a space throughout this act where she's teetering on that edge of like, how shitty am I going to be? And hearing her mom say that, right, with what we're seeing and what we've seen also leads to what we've talked about, in our last season, where we talked about the council more specifically and like her mother's role in it and how her mother's not really much of a progressive. She kind of plays to the status quo and it's kind of like a faux, oh, I care about Zaun. Well, do you? Because a lot of the situation is because of her mother, which makes the death of her mother an interesting point. But the show goes on. We get this meeting between Ambessa, and this episode also has some jumping in certain areas. We'll key it out when we get there. But we hop over to a meeting with Ambessa and one of the guild merchants, specifically Salo's guild merchant, Amara. And Ambessa is attacked, and it turns out that Amara is a vessel for the Black Rose. And Ambessa's able to get out of the situation because her guard, which we've been shown scenes of like their armor and their weapons and how they have these special runes on them that grow green. We're not surprised. Obviously, that's a connection to like Ionia. We'll get there, right? But Ambessa's guard is able to break the connection of one of the chains that's holding him down through the Black Rose using the power of that. Ambessa is then freed from her chains, and she's able to kill Amara before she can do anything else with this Black Rose power. And then she mentions to the guard, because he's like, it's probably about time we let Mel know what's going on. And she's like, absolutely not. I don't want to get Mel involved because then the Black Rose will go after her.
And like, this is just a big moment for us to just pat ourselves on the back
Yeah.
because we called it. Like, you could go listen to us talk about season 1 of Arcane,
Mhm.
and we definitely predicted that the Black Rose would be involved. Here's a Black Rose. We called that. Hell yeah. Once again, we could also pat ourselves on the
History will
back.
absolve us.
We can also pat ourselves on the back because if you're interested in how this runic guard is able to save Ambessa in this fight, you can go listen to our Riven episode,
Yep.
our Riven champion bio. We actually break it down how that works because she's not the only Noxian that has this. So
Yeah.
it's
Great point.
like we're just winning. Like we're clearly the best.
It feels good when you're a historian and you're just like, listen to us.
The end is coming. The end is coming.
But no, it's cool to see them focus so much time because there's a lot of shots throughout this show that shows you those specific runes. Although we're dealing with hex tech, although we're dealing with other types of technology and quote magic, it's a focal point of, hey, keep an eye on this, remember this.
And as we've talked about at length in this show, is that magic is pervasive throughout all of Runeterra.
Yeah.
So just because the Piltover or the Piltovans have discovered a way to tie science and magic together doesn't mean that all of the other cultures don't have any ties to magic. And that's what we got to see in these shots. And I appreciate the level of detail that the animators went to make it clear, to make it very apparent that it's like, hey, look at this guard, look at the runes, look at what they're doing as far
Look at
as
his
the
like mini
process.
rituals he's doing in the background where he's like
Yeah.
praying and like doing these things. Like this all matters.
It all matters because every culture has their own way to interact with Arcane.
Yeah. So then we get a scene of Kate promising Vi that, hey, we're about to go in here and crack some heads, but I won't step over the line. I promise you. And gives Vi this kind of sense of hope that the Kate she loves is still in there. And then we jump to Salo in basically an opium den, and he's getting a treatment, which essentially is it looks like shimmer in some form attached to a paintbrush that this woman is painting along his legs to essentially absolve him of some pain, which is interesting because when you think about opium or you think about medicinal uses of drugs we have in the real world, like cannabis, this makes sense. And shimmer has a connection to like hex tech and all that. So it's like, we, it's a great way to express another side, another use of something that we've only been shown to be destructive and dangerous.
Yeah. We could look at like the war on drugs in the real world here because like, poppy farms tend to be targeted by a lot of government agencies, despite the fact that this is also one of the plants that's like tied firsthand with drugs like morphine. Or the coca leaf. The coca leaf was part of South American cultures as a medicinal herb. But, it just so happens that if you add a buttload of chemicals to it, you can refine it to cocaine. And, not
Cocaina.
cocaine, but, just something having the capacity for evil does not mean that it is wholly evil. Like, it's the people that end up using it. But
It's all a tool.
yeah, it's all a tool, but what that's not what the seed's important for. It's that Piltover is just like us. Their political figures are also in opium dens and brothels. Like he's just like me, for real, for real.
And we end this part 3, which essentially Abessa shows up unexpectedly because he didn't even know, like she knew about this location, and tells him, listen, I know everything. I need you to do something. Tells the woman to get out. Tells Salo, gather all the oligarchs, basically, in the city. We're going to have a meeting about the next steps for Piltover. And this takes us to part 2.
I also love that, like, while Ambessa is, like, officially making her move,
Mhm.
like, just the end of that conversation is very casual, a very casual mention of, "Oh, yeah, about your woman and Mara." Like,
Oh, yeah.
just casually throw in there, "I need your help covering up a murder."
It's and Bess is such a great character because she's Noxian and she's so steeped. Well, we don't know if she's Noxian. Remember, Noxian is a culmination of many different older tribes from all over Runeterra, but she is Noxian as depicted. And she's so steep in war and espionage that it's like going grocery shopping. She doesn't treat any of it with any extremes or anything. It's a way of life, and we're going to do these things. And these are things that happen. I'm not going to treat it as if it's important or less important than anything else because it's like drinking water for her.
Yeah, her moral code is way different,
Yeah.
and because it's a Noxian code, regardless of whether she was born into it or a tribe that was assimilated, she is Noxian through and through at this point, which is why she's gonna need your help to hide a body.
Once again, a tip of our hats to great character writing. So part two starts off with Mel meeting up with the lady who I didn't mention was Vestayan, and her name is Lest. And a very attractive Vestayan, by the way. I'll just throw that out there. And
Oh, okay.
they designed
Okay.
her a very specific way. Okay, I refuse. I
Like,
refuse to be berated.
this episode's officially dedicated to our boy, Eduardo, we miss you.
Eduardo Santokello, we do this for you.
We do this for you.
So Mel meets up with Lest, and she was with Sallow earlier, and she was listening in because she is a type of Vestayan, has like a feline feature, so she can hear, right, very well. And she's also an informant for Mel, which is, something that she probably gets from her mother. But there's a lot of informants for Mel around Runeterra. That's kind of her skill as part of the council. And Les lets her know that, she doesn't want to spy for her anymore. The information she's about to give her is going to be the last bit of information she's going to give her because she is terrified of Ambessa. And Les lets her know, okay, this meeting of oligarchs is going to happen. You might want to do something about that. It's being planned. But she also lets her know, not only do I fear Ambessa is currently fearing something. And I don't know what it is, but I can smell that she's afraid. It's like an animalistic fear. So you may want to figure out whatever the hell that is. And then Lest disappears.
And if anything, this
Back to
scene
the spirit
should,
realm.
yeah, this scene should solidify that Lest is one of the smartest characters of the show.
Hmm.
Of just like, yo, that woman's terrifying.
Yeah.
What scares her? I don't want to know. I
Yeah.
don't want to know. I don't want to know. So here I've fulfilled my job.
Yeah.
Here is my 2 week notice. 2 weeks happened 5 minutes ago.
And she even tells Mel, she's like, you can't protect me. She's like, well, I mean, I can try. And she's like, all right, here's information. Poof.
Like, what a Chad move.
So then we switch to the science team. Working on their latest project. We have Jason, Echo, and Heimendinger, and Jace is explaining Victor's theory on wild runes to Echo. And Jace discovers while he's talking through it that they may have to actually head back underground to find out more about the effects on the tree. Remember, that's kind of where we left off. Is the tree's essentially being poisoned by something.
And with this scene, there are two things that are very noticeable to me, which is the the way that Jace and Echo bounce off of each other
Yeah.
as far as just like students. Their conversation is a lot more akin to the conversations that we got to see between him and Victor in season one.
Mhm.
So it's like this was a very refreshing thing because we hadn't seen Jace like this since season one.
Yeah.
Also combined with like Heimerdinger's presence, like we actually get to see Heimerdinger serving as a professor in the scene, which is a really cool. I would love to get more content with
Yeah.
the three of these guys in the same room. That said, the other thing that's very noticeable, because like you said, Jace discovers that they will have to go underground. Jace doesn't say why though.
Yeah.
Nor does Jace really open up that it's like that's where we're going. It's more that like Jace has an idea of what's going on, and he's openly not sharing it because he already knows.
Mhm.
He already knows as far as like what his position in all of this has meant for the people of Zon,
Mhm.
and he is like, I'm not gonna tell Echo, or at least not to his face. And it's just like, dude,
Yeah.
like you need to pick a lane here. You're either
Yeah.
about it or you're gonna fix it, one or the other. And he's just
Exactly.
plays the middle of the road. And it's like this was such a nuanced scene that's also could be argued as a throwaway scene.
Yeah, because one thing we always try to remind you guys is that when it comes to intelligence level, right, of a Victor and a Jace, Echo and Jinx, they're all at that level. It's just their circumstances are different. It's a big theme of the show. So Echo's gonna figure it out just as fast as Jace would just tell him. But we do jump to a different scene again. We jump back to Mel, and Mel's now back in her office updating her assistant about what she learned from Lest, and even her assistant's like, "I should have figured that out, right? Like, I should have known that before you had to go to Lest for it," because she's a big network of informants. And then we jump back now to see the task force looking for Jinx, and they're actually in her hideout. And Vi tells Kate, "Listen," and it's a new hideout. Remember the old hideout, they completely shot that shit up and filled it with smoke. So Jinx is now at this new location. And they figure it out. And Vi kind of tells Kate, listen, when the moment comes, I want you to go ahead and take the shot at Jinx. She kind of reckons with herself on that. But I'm pretty sure Kate was like, I'm shooting regardless, dog. You didn't have to tell me twice.
The like it's so weird that like Vi is like still reinforcing the Kate of like take the shot
Yeah.
because like if anything this kind of reinforces the I wouldn't say naivety, but I would say that it reinforces the doubt within Vi
Yeah.
as far as like it really gives the image that she is picking up on all the same signs that we as the audience are picking up on of the path that Caitlyn's going down.
So how can I
And
manage? Yeah.
she's just denying it because it's like, well, if you see Jinx, please take the shot because I'm not strong enough to do it. Despite the fact that Caitlyn's just like got like targets of Jinx probably in her
Yeah.
bedroom now with all of her
Oh,
eyes
we've seen
shot
her
out.
cork board with all the red string. We talked about that in season 1, right? She's obsessed with Jinx as a target.
Yep. Yeah, so it's kind of like a heartbreaking thing,
Yeah,
but
because and it's also, Vi's in love with Caitlyn, so it's one of those things of, do I love him? Am I loving a monster? Do I have these doubts of the person that's in my head? And this is just a relationship thing where people tend to build up their partner or their target of interest in their head. And when that person doesn't fulfill that, you start to become like, oh, well, I can make excuses, right? I can try to play the situation, like, okay, I know you're probably having a hard time with Kate, take the shot, right? It's like Vi kind of knows in the back of her head that Kate's gonna take that fucking shot regardless, but she doesn't want to admit that, right? She's trying to completely build this facade brick by brick.
I can fix her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's. It's so weird. The girl with the neck tattoos is trying to fix the uppity preppy girl. Yo, once again, tip of the hat to great character writing. So we go back to Jace now in the science team, and they arrive at the core, deep underground. And Echo's like, I didn't know this was here. And, he mentions this seems pretty close to like Zon, rather like, why isn't this on the surface? And he's like, oh, well, the mesh is on the surface. We put the core here because we weren't sure what was going to happen. And he's like, so you put it closer to my people? And he's like, well, no, it's not near popular centers, right? Of where the people are, like populous centers. And he's like, well, it is obstructing our natural resources, like our air and our water, which is a humanity crime, right? You can't do that. And that's mostly what's affecting the tree. And Jace doesn't even respond because it's like he knows, but
Yeah.
he didn't care. And then Heimer notices some anomaly happening near them and he reaches for it and suddenly they all disappear into a white space. And that ends part 2.
And this is also like one of the first times outside of Victor being resurrected in the spawning pool.
Yeah.
This is the first time that we got to see an anomaly with Hex Tech that is starting to look flesh-like.
Yeah.
Like something is clearly wrong. Like it's not like a glitch or anything. It is something is very clearly wrong,
Yeah.
whether you understand what's happening or not. You could look at it and be like, that's not good. And in perfect fashion, the two students are arguing while their professor is just like, I'm on task. But I mean, they have good reason to argue because it's they like Jace knows he's in the wrong,
Yeah.
and it's also him getting caught with like, hey, yeah, the mesh is on the surface, aka I built a blue heron
Yeah,
to distract people from where all the actual critical elements are.
yeah, one thing we've learned about, the difference of these two pupils is that Jace doesn't have the proper ethics. His ethics are skewed, and also his integrity is kind of skewed as well. Where Echo does have those two pieces, which even though he's in like a more of a revolution standpoint when it comes to the situation with Zahn, he still doesn't exploit. He's not willing to exploit people to forego ethics and integrity, and that's what makes him the good
Yeah.
guy, right, in this
And
situation.
And to reinforce that, this is still at a point. This is still at a point where Echo is operating under the assumption that all of the other big figures of Zahn
Mhm.
are dead.
Yeah.
Like everyone thinks that Vi's dead. Everyone thinks that like Jinx is just an idea, not an actual person.
Yeah.
Vander's gone. Silco's gone. Like all of the big leaders of Zahn are gone, so he can't really afford to break away from those
Yeah.
morals either because there's no one in Zahn looking out for Zahn.
Yeah. Zahn is massive. I mean, the creators have said that. We've said that. Like, Piltover is big. Zahn is bigger, but it's underground. We want to
Yeah.
keep
What
bringing
are
that
you
up.
saying? Are you saying that the upper class of any society is always the minority of just physical count?
What?
That doesn't seem right.
Never happened.
The
There's no historical
1%.
record.
Eat the rich.
Part 3. So now we put our foot in the gas. Sakuga begins, and we get a jump between both the science team and the fight with Jinx. So Jinx reveals herself. Hey, welcome to my new place. I'm gonna fuck you up here. This is what's gonna happen, right? And the Sakuga begins. We essentially have it play out where Savika's kind of distracting Kate so she can't get a shot, and then Vi and Jinx are just duking it out like sisters do. And during this time frame, the Science Squad are now facing what looks like a floating, living Hextech blob, and it's bending matter around them and also affecting and distorting the fight.
Yeah, so we actually see that while the science squad is actually, they're almost being refracted as
Yeah,
if their bodies are becoming light instead of physical matter. But every time that something happens to them within the anomaly, the Caitlin's gun starts also malfunctioning.
yep,
Vi's gloves start malfunctioning. So everything with Hex Tech starts screwing up, which also includes Jinx's pistol.
hmm
Now, her Gatling gun and Fishbones, like they don't use the same Hex Tech crystals, but everything with Hex Tech is getting sucked up into whatever is happening at the anomaly with the science crew. So this fight is really interesting because it has that sci-fi book feel of like
hmm
two different parties that you're watching, but whatever's happening to one is still happening to the other. So it's a neat way to tie it all in together. And it makes for a really interesting fight because there are multiple times that someone probably should have died, but then the hex tech's going wild and they're like,
Oh
ah!
yeah, and the way it's cut is so well done because this is the last quarter of the or the last quarter. I can't do math. It's the last third of the show. I know we broke it into 3 parts, but we got pretty close to the way it's divided. So the rest of the show is this fight, right, for this episode. And the distortion is happening to her gun, which means Kate can't get a shot off or a clear shot. So she misses a shot, ends up blowing off Jinx's middle finger. And then Vi's able to finally pin Jinx down. And, Jinx kind of gives up where she's like, okay, you beat me, right? Go ahead and finish it. Do the job you came here to do. It's better than it's you than anyone else. And then Issa, or Isha, I think it's Issa.
Isha.
It's Isha? Okay.
Yeah.
So Isha pops up, jumps between her and Jinx, grabs Jinx's pistol and points it at Vi with her finger on the trigger. And Kate yells at Vi to move. And she's like, so she can get a shot, right? Like she told her, but Vi's reminding her, listen, now the situation's changed. There's a child here. Do not shoot. Do not shoot. And Kate does not give a fuck. If it means she can get Jinx, she's just like, listen, my gun's malfunctioning. I finally have time. Let me get this shot now. And it's just pure chaos emotionally in this scene.
So I love this little depiction here because it like ties a little piece of reality into it,
Yeah.
which is proper gun safety.
Mhm.
Like you don't point a gun at anything that's not your target.
Yeah.
Like that is proper gun safety.
It's not a
So
video game. Well, I mean,
yes. Eh, oh, oh,
I
oh,
did it. I did a
uh,
joke.
are we a League of Legends?
Are we some kind of League of Legends?
but but no, like you don't point a gun, especially a loaded gun, at anything that's not something that you don't intend to shoot.
Yeah.
So that it's like Vi is like kind of pointing out, hey, there's an innocent kid. Okay, it's like, hey, there's two corpses. And it's like, bro,
The Ambessa mindset.
yeah, and so, like, this is the scene. I think this is the scene, like, because we're gonna get another one. Spoiler, but like, this is the scene where Vi realizes that it's like, I might not be able to fix her.
Yeah. Yeah. So during this distraction, Savika pulls a lever and it starts setting off some charges with Jinx is kind of mad because it didn't go as planned. She's like, this is not how this was supposed to go in like a very Joker fashion. And the discharges blow up and dislodge a massive stone from a main vent. And this blows Kate and Vi back, causing the rubble behind them to then block the tunnel between the two parties. And then the gray starts to rush past, and now it's flushed out with the vent system because the vent has started again. And it explodes through the vents, scattering across all the vents that haven't been used in forever in Piltover in a colorful fashion because Jinx has also strapped like color bombs next to all the vents so that it would push up in different, red, blues, and different soft hues of color.
And I like this is probably like what eh, is going to be like the most unique thing from this episode because it is not tied into anything that we were really watching at this point, which
Yeah.
was that Jake set all of this up as far as the fight with Vi, and we know from episode 2 that she was convinced that this is going to be her time to kill Vi, to finish it all,
Hmm.
to be done with it. But it ends up that like neither of them die. But despite the fact that that was her goal, she still set up all of this showmanship as far as rerouting the gray to Piltover
Hmm.
and making sure that it's very visible to all of Zon. And this is really weird because it's like Jake's is already kind of, she's the most wanted in Piltover, and Zonites are already kind of looking to her as the next symbol to fill in the gap between Silco and Bander's deaths.
Hmm.
So it's like we've seen that she's not worried about that.
Yeah.
Like at no point in like her actions and her and what she says her goals are is she worried about that. But she still set up this spectacle.
Yeah.
So it really just shows how unhinged Jinx is because it's like it's not her goal to terrorize the people of Piltover. She just wants to fucking kill Caitlyn and Vi, but she still put on the show.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is great story writing because we will probably never know why.
Yeah.
We will never know why she put on the show, but she did.
Yeah. That's the Joker aspect of her character that they've written so well to own it, right? Like it's one of the things we keep bringing up is that it's clear to tell, it's easy to tell that Jinx's character design was inspired by Joker and some Harley Quinn stuff, right? So for them to take a character and make it so much their own, even though we clearly know the inspiration, they just always have nailed it since forever. But
Absolutely.
yeah, so then Kate gets mad at Vi now that they're trapped because they can't go back and like re-engage. They're separated by the stone and they're now in this vent. And Kate's just gonna head back up and she gets mad at Vi for essentially blowing their chance at Jinx. Like, you said you're gonna give me the shot. And Vi gets saddened because she's starting to see how bloodthirsty Kate has become, especially with Isha becoming a part of that picture. Kate wasn't going to not shoot unless Vi was in the way. And then Kate decides she's going to return to the surface and leaves Vi there just sobbing because she can't believe what just happened. This is now a complete confirmation of her fears. And she's hurt because she hit her with the butt of her gun in her kidney. So it's like, I'm gonna sit here for a bit and think about my relationship.
Yeah. And you now, because this is like the end point for Act One,
Yeah.
as far as like Vi and Caitlyn's the status of their relationship
will they, won't
for
they,
this
yeah.
act. So now we'll bring it up because it's like their relationship has been an absolute roller coaster to watch. And you, depending on when you're listening to this, you could hop onto social media and just see how fans have reacted
Yeah.
to everything that we've gotten for their relationship, because it's been a lot. And a lot of the people who were really invested in it have definitely enjoyed it. So we're not going to talk about that, except for the fact that it's like this is some of the best drama in a video game adaptation that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And people who were really enjoying that ship are eating really well. Like, this
Yes.
is your season. This is the season for you. And Act One ends with yet another woman who is entangled with law enforcement being abused. So the like,
Classic.
I think life imitates art, really.
True, true. So we then jump to a scene with a follow-up meeting with Mel and her assistant. And then the Black Rose takes control of her assistant's body and then abducts Mel into an unknown location. There's not much talking happening in the scene. It's just this scene of how we're getting the depiction of the Black Rose, which is an interesting way they decided on.
And
Very different from everything we've read, right, in the previous lore. The Black Rose is more physical than anything, but it's like a spell that goes off to essentially suck her up and teleport her somewhere else.
Yeah, like this scene has a lot of major lore implications, and I feel like we could talk about it for a good few minutes, but we won't
We'll
do
get
that
there.
in this episode.
Give us a couple weeks.
We'll get there. But if that's something that you also noticed and are interested in, hit us up, podcastcore@gmail.com. And because this has a lot of implications as far as how the Black Rose actually operate.
Yeah.
Because they apparently have the means to just teleport people. That's wild.
Yeah.
But it does kind of make sense because, one of the jokes that I'd like to make here is because Mel just gets sucked up. So one of the jokes I like to make is that LeBlanc just ganked Mel.
That's what it feels like.
But like LeBlanc in game has the means to like teleport.
Yeah.
So, it would make sense that like a very powerful mage who's been around for multiple millennium that has the ability to teleport could probably grab somebody too.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. It makes sense. But this is a very interesting way to see how the Black Rose actually operates amongst all of Runeterra. Because we're not Noxus. Like she didn't sail to Noxus before this scene.
Yeah.
Like she's still in Piltover.
Exactly. So now we get to the main scene that got everybody's attention for ending Act 3. And it's the final scene where we're now at the orchestrated meeting of the oligarchs, being led by Mbessa. And in her speech, she reveals to everyone that they should institute martial law. And it should be under one leader that they all agree on. And she will lend that leader the strength of her Noxian forces to go raid Zon. And her suggestion, which Sallow thinks was going to be him, turns out to be Caitlyn, the head of the enforcers. So she's kind of picked to be the leader. Everyone's looking around. And then Mbessa begins banging on her chest, sort of in salute, in this kind of tribal way to get everyone in the crowd to visibly show their support for who will be their new leader, Caitlyn. And the crowd begins to follow along. And one of the enforcers, we still don't have his name yet, is disgusted by it. It's the gruff guy that we've seen before. He's disgusted by it and leaves. And I'll explain. We'll talk about a bit more about that scene specifically, or that choice of his and what that represents. But then during this moment, we're getting flashbacks of the memorial attack. And we find out Ambessa is the one that coordinated it because she wanted to use that event as a catalyst for Zahn to implement martial law. And Kate begins to eat up the attention, and she's starting to feel the hate in her from everything that's going on. Remember, she just lost her chance at Jinx. So she walks to the front, turns to the crowd, and salutes back. And it's fascism time, baby.
Oh, we are going full fascism.
Full fash.
And I had the time of my life with this scene as a fan, because like you said, with the banging on the chest and more tribalistic, all the Noxians are the first to do it, which this is Noxus in a nutshell. Like, we've talked about it a lot in our show, but it was a gathering of tribes that ended up building this nation. So it's a lot of warlike tribes. So it's like, this is a very Noxian way to do it. But also, as a fan, it's like, I had kind of been betting on Ambessa being behind all of the attacks already.
Yeah, you called that.
And so it's like, hell yeah, I love being right. That's also fun. But it also, like, they did a great job with very little time in this scene to depict, like, the transition of one government policy to the other, because you're not ever going to have 100% of the people on board. Never. And they do a good job of showing that there are people of, respectable standing who aren't on board, like with the gruff guy turning away. He's an enforcer. Like, you just got the announcement that, like, your organization is now going to be the most powerful organization in your government, and your boss is the leader of all of it. This is as big of a promotion as you're ever going to get. And he's like, no, this isn't right.
This is disgusting.
Of course, fascism's not right.
And it definitely hints that he is also a Zahnite. Like, this is somebody who we believe was born in Zahn and just kind of moved to Piltover, got his shit together, and just became an enforcer. Which happens.
Like he got out of a bad neighborhood, and the way that he was able to provide for himself in a place that he couldn't afford was by joining law enforcement. That's never happened in all of life. Never. Poor guy.
I know. So after that scene, in the fashion of the previous episodes of this act, we get that last single shot of Singed and what he's up to. And he's created a massive wolf hybrid abomination, and he's giving it a blood transfusion, which that can't be good. And that's where we end Act 1.
I mean, there's no character that looks like a giant, like, wolf with a bunch of, like, tubes and machinery sticking out of him in League of Legends, is there? No.
New character.
I would know about it. I would know about it, but yeah, no, he's very clearly building Warwick. Like, Warwick is in play, which is crazy, because we know that Warwick is not really something you can control. And we're already in a powder keg of a situation for all of Piltover and Zahn, because martial law is being implemented. Not only is martial law being implemented, but there was a large terror attack on Piltover again. And the moral compass of Zahn and Echo is now MIA. And you're going to introduce Warwick into that. The Act 2 is going to be insane. Just absolutely insane, because of how big of a powder keg you're dropping Warwick into.
So
that's how I feel.
As far as the discussion section, we don't really have much, because we're gonna have more episodes. So don't worry, we'll talk about it. But back to the scene where that enforcer turns away, that's kind of another time where we're getting a reference to something else we've seen in another animation, which is Spider-Man Across the Spideyverse, where there's a scene in there where Miguel is giving, a speech about how he wants to take action moving forward. And Spider-Punk, which everyone fell in love with, also during that same time frame turns away. He's one of the few that actually doesn't want to go with Miguel and is open about it by just separating himself from the situation. And this feels like a callback to that, which is another very successful animated show. So that was cool to see that part of the martial law scene. But that is a very good scene. That is an amazing way to end the first act.
Yep.
And no notes. I have no notes.
Oh, absolutely no notes. Like act one did not disappoint at all.
Yeah.
And which is kind of crazy to say because this has been more than a year in the making as far as like from season 1 to season 2.
Yeah.
And season 1 was a crazy success.
Yeah.
We, as far as in American media, we tend to not see a giant success get followed up by more success.
Yeah.
That's not the usual way that things go. We tend to get the Matrix and then the Matrix Reloaded.
Stop. Why'd you? I always remind myself there's only one Matrix movie. So thanks for that.
You're welcome.
I mean, just like they never made an Avatar movie. It's just things that actually happen. Like these are factual things in existence.
They never made an Aragon movie.
Nope.
They've never made a Last Compass or the Golden Compass movie.
Stop, Ed. Stop.
Give me my fucking money
Our
back.
Poor listeners that stuck around. Listen, that's it for this episode. Went a bit longer, but yeah, thanks for sticking around with us. I know we just finally finished Act 1. Those of you who've been watching the show is complete. The show is done. We are aware, and we appreciate you guys kind of following along with our plan of taking this, step by step. And now you get to relive every one of these episodes through us on every listen. So we appreciate those who are sticking with us as we release these out.
And because like we said, like it's all finished now and we are just, actually living our lives instead of just no-lifing a recording for it.
Yeah.
And we appreciate y'all, but we also want to talk about it too. And you are more than welcome to reach out to us with the things that you want to talk about. Like if you have theories as far as what you think, like the ending of all of this is, you can throw it at us. You don't have to wait for us to record episode 9. You could reach out to us at any time.
Yeah.
But we're going to take our time getting to 9 because we're not getting any younger.
Yeah. And just like y'all, we're going to be waiting for the next season for a while. So with that, thanks for listening. And we'll be back soon with the beginning of Act 2.
Yeah, take care, everybody.